What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Transaction History, where I take a player and look at their moves and trades to see how they've altered the landscape of the NBA. Last episode, we dove into Miami Heat wing Jimmy Butler, and this week, we'll be diving into Los Angeles Clippers forward Kawhi Leonard. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment who you want to see next on Transaction History. Let's hop straight into this.
Kawhi Leonard was ranked as the 56th best recruit per ESPN in the class of 2009, opting to stay home in the state of California and commit to the San Diego State Aztecs. As a freshman, he'd earned Mountain West Rookie of the Year honors before really bursting onto the scene as a sophomore. He'd go on to earn second-team All-American honors, but his season would come to an end as they'd lose to the national champions UConn and Kemba Walker in the Sweet 16. When he declared for the 2011 NBA Draft, he would watch All-Stars Kyrie Irving, Kemba Walker, and Klay Thompson get selected ahead of him before he would go just outside the lottery, 15th overall, to the Indiana Pacers. While we wouldn't quite get to see the pairing of Kawhi Leonard and Paul George just yet, the Pacers had different plans, opting to trade him away on draft night. The Indiana Pacers agreed to a deal that would send 2011 15th overall pick Kawhi Leonard and the rights to international forward Davis Bertans to the San Antonio Spurs for promising guard George Hill. While Hill would go on to establish himself as a solid starter and play in Indiana for a few seasons, Kawhi Leonard would go on to far exceed the expectations that were thought of him during that trade. While Davis Bertans didn't come over and play with the Spurs to the 2016-17 season, Leonard had already established himself as one of the best players in the league by that point. While Leonard would already go on to establish himself as a starter with the Spurs by the end of his rookie season, he would become quite the household name until the 2014 NBA playoffs. Facing off against the Miami Heat in the 2014 finals, Kawhi Leonard would be tasked with slowing down LeBron James, as his performance would go on to help the Spurs win the NBA title and Kawhi Leonard a Finals MVP. He'd go on to parlay that success, as he'd win back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year awards in the following seasons, and he'd have top 3 MVP finishes in the 2016 and 2017 seasons. However, in the 2017 playoffs, facing off against the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals, Kawhi Leonard would have an injury sustained by Zaza Pachulia that would lead him to miss the rest of the season. While his return to the court in San Antonio seemed like it'd be a bounce back for him, he'd only play 9 games, as he'd end up requesting a trade out. While many thought he'd end up heading back to Los Angeles, a surprise team came in and threw an offer that would be a high-risk, high-reward play for them. In an effort to get over the hump in the Eastern Conference, on July 18, 2018, the San Antonio Spurs and Toronto Raptors would agree to a deal that would send DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a 2019 first to the Spurs in exchange for Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. While Toronto had no guarantee of being able to re-sign Leonard, they made the risk, trading away their franchise star DeMar DeRozan and some other assets for a chance to potentially win a championship. And it might have gone in their favor. When looking at the totality of Kawhi Leonard's career, there's no doubt that the Toronto Raptors version of him is the best that we've ever seen. Appearing in 60 regular season games for the Raptors, he'd go on to earn All-NBA second-team honors and would lead Toronto to the second seed in the Eastern Conference. In round 1, they'd face off against the Orlando Magic, winning in 5 games, but DJ Augustin would throw a little bit of a wrench in their plans, taking Game 1 on a fantastic game winner that looked a little like this.
Steve Clifford going to let them play it out. 5 to shoot. Augustine. 3 to shoot. He'll take. You bet. DJ Augustine. A cold-blooded trade.
They go on to beat the Philadelphia 76ers in dramatic fashion in round 2, highlighted by a Kawhi Leonard game-winning buzzer beater that's arguably the best shot in Toronto Raptors history that went a little like this.
You got to be aware of the inbounder here if you're Philly.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger? Game! Series! Toronto has won!
They go on to face off and beat the Milwaukee Bucks in the conference finals before putting an end to the Kevin Durant era in Golden State with a 4-2 victory in the NBA Finals. However, at the end of the day, Kawhi Leonard was simply just a one-year rental for the Raptors as they trade away DeMar DeRozan in order to get that illustrious NBA title. At the end of the day, Leonard would go on to head back to Los Angeles to play for one of the teams. In the 2019 NBA offseason, Kawhi Leonard would ink a 4-year, $176 million contract with the Los Angeles Clippers as they go on to trade promising young guard Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and other assets to bring over Paul George, assembling two of the best two-way wings in the NBA together. However, their plan didn't go as expected, as Kawhi Leonard battled injuries throughout his entire Clippers career, as the team would only peak at the Western Conference Finals, losing in 6 games to the Phoenix Suns. Kawhi Leonard continues the battle of injuries as Paul George left this past offseason to break up the group and join the Philadelphia 76ers. Leonard has yet to step on the court with the Clippers this year, but they've been promising without him, so who knows how the rest of his Clippers career goes, but there's no doubt that it's been a failure up to this point.
Now that we're caught up to speed to where Kawhi Leonard's career is now, it's time to take a look back at the two teams that traded away Leonard to see what they were able to turn those assets into, starting off with his draft night trade with the Indiana Pacers.
The only thing that the Pacers got in return for Kawhi Leonard and Davis Bertans was George Hill, who go on to play 5 seasons in Indianapolis in 319 games before being traded to acquire Jeff Teague, who would play 82 games in 1 season before leaving in free agency, leaving the Indiana Pacers with no current assets as a result of that Kawhi Leonard trade, only the hope of potentially of having Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on the same team in Indianapolis. It's a completely different story in San Antonio, as they are able to get plenty of assets and future picks for Kawhi Leonard, starting off with DeMar DeRozan, who played 206 games with the Spurs before being traded to the Chicago Bulls in a package featuring Al-Farouq Aminu, Thaddeus Young, and draft capital. Moving on to Jakob Poeltl, he played 326 games with the Spurs before being traded to the Raptors for Khem Birch and draft picks, with one of those draft picks being a 2024 first that was used to select Rob Dillingham. That 2019 first that was in the original trade ended up becoming Kelton Johnson, leaving their current assets with Malachi Branham, Harrison Ingram, Sidi Sissoko, the aforementioned Kelton Johnson, a 2025 first via Chicago, top 10 protected, a 2025 second via Chicago, and the last firsts from Minnesota, the 2030 and 2031 first, came from trading Rob Dillingham on draft night to Minnesota.
While usually I break down the rankings, there's nothing really much need to be said here. The Spurs walk away as clear winners from the Kawhi trade, while the Indiana Pacers can only think about what could have been had they had Kawhi Leonard on their team. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment who you want to see next on Transaction History. We'll see you next week in our next episode. Cheers.